Hey, welcome to a sad little happy place for me, my sad little happy place. I'm here at Burger King in the parking lot. Just fill out a survey. I was thinking, I had a big thing recently where I was talking about how, it kind of took away from the experience a little bit that they raised the price of this free Whopper you get when you buy a small drink and fries. I was getting away with it for around $6, and now it's $9. I get an Impossible Whopper, so there's an upcharge. But anybody who's interested in doing the survey thing, I should say that if you just want a regular Whopper, it would still be $6. It just costs more for me because I'm doing the Impossible Whopper. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. It's oh man, I love this weather. It's just gray and cloudy, a little cold and rainy. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I don't think I have any preliminary shit. Let's cut to the chase. Let's get this process going here. I'm gonna try to do a shorter video. I think we've gotten to the point where you don't want to hear too much build up anymore if anybody's watching these. A little Firth of Fifth Genesis there in their live album, Seconds Out, 1977. I think it came out. All right, here we go. Home of the Whopper. Oh, I pulled back too far. I parked too far back, so it's like kind of weird. So I guess I'm gonna have to drive by it and do one of these things. Let's see here. Here we go. I never do. I try to do these stupid thumbnail things, so. I don't know. Maybe that works. Okay, let's see. Who's he gonna be? Employee roulette. Guadalupe, Alejandra, Emily.
How can I help you?
Hi, I have a survey code.
Okay, what's the number?
9487. Is this Emily?
Yeah.
Hi.
You can pull up to the window.
Okay, thank you. Alright, so I didn't do any crunchy golden fry reminder. No salt. I'm just gonna make it. I'm not gonna say anything. See how it turns out. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm okay. Thank you. Pull up? Oh, well, yeah. Never mind.
Yeah, I'll bring it up.
Okay. All right.
You can just do it here.
What's that?
You can just pull up here.
Okay. Well, but I don't want to. If I pull up there, then it means that I want to park. Okay. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to get in the rain. Basically, I think that's what that means. What do I talk about today? God, I don't know. I don't know. Well, I guess I thought of something. It was the last time I was torn between two things, and I remember the other thing I was torn between, but I don't know if it's that interesting. I don't know. It's about it's having to do with yard work. You know, I've got these on either side of our house are two old men, two really older men. Oh, well, there's Guadalupe. She's I don't know. Oh boy, is she gonna get mad here? What's she doing? Where is she? I don't know, she's what's Guadalupe doing? She's acting fucking weird, and she pulled her. Oh, sorry. I shouldn't be all tied up in what Guadalupe's doing. She's bringing a box of, what is that? God, I feel like I should have gotten out and helping her. Look, she was struggling to carry this big box. And she would just be, Jesus Christ. Okay. There she goes with another big box. Ah, she's like squatting while it's so heavy. She's squatting. I feel like a dick, right? She's holding it and like kind of squatting while she's running it, trying to hold it on her lap. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was like bags of Dr. Pepper. Yeah, anyway. Oh boy, now she's gonna try to come here. She's gonna walk in. Hi.
Hi.
Wow. I gotta go to hell, look. I gotta go to hell, look, from Guadalupe. I see, and I feel like it's Emily's fault because she said that I wanted to pull into the parking space, but she was like kind of insistent that I just pull up right just beyond the drive-thru. You know, and so there's this metal railing here that, let's show you, see, this is what's going on here. See, there's this metal railing, and there's not much space to get by, so Guadalupe had to squeeze past. And you know, and she's squeezing back, she's like kind of doing to the side, and then like she like kind of like looks up like, and I said, hey, she goes, hi. I could pull up further. I could have pulled up further, but if I do, then I'd have to like, hey, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. So it's like I made it easier on Emily, but harder on Guadalupe. God, wow, the mountain of ice is just still there. I mean, it's shrunken quite a bit, but you know, let's take a look at it. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how invested you are in this thing. This stupid thing. All right, mountain of ice. There it is. dirty little hump. It's a dirty little hump. Yeah, so it's like the only thing I can do to to make Guadalupe happy is just to pull my pants down or to be like spazzing out. Oh my God. I don't know. Maybe I should, you know what? Let's just keep this one short. I'm not gonna talk about the yard work thing. I'll talk about that another time, maybe. Let's see what we got here. Let me turn off the car. Oh, these fries look so golden. They look so golden. God, please let them be hard and crunchy. Look at that. Look at that dark golden. Look at that those dark golden fries. Let's see here. All right. We got a double sticker. Oh, that is a golden crunch. And what golden flavor? My God. Wow. 10 out of 10 golden crunch. Oh my God. That is a golden crunch. I guess I just shouldn't say anything anymore. Bag fries. Okay. Now, let's get a little sip of Diet Coke. My one for the week. Unless I happen to come back to Burger King for some reason. All right, now, Impossible Whopper. Which side? I want to... You know what? I'm going to open it from this side this time. I just want to... Is there going to be rogue lettuce on this side? Yes, there is. 1, 2. Well, it's breaking apart. Come on, rogue lettuce. Love it. Love it. I should have gotten out of the car the second I saw Guadalupe get out of her car and offer to help. You know, I remember one time, you know, I mean, I always suspected I was a psychopath, which I am. And I mean, there's no problem. I don't have a problem with it. There shouldn't be a problem with somebody being a psychopath. I saw an article the other day saying, what did it say? It was something to the effect of like, don't, you know, basically just saying, you know, be nicer to psychopaths because they don't really want to be, bad. You know, they'd rather be nice. And, you know, of course, it was just like lots of haha reacts and stuff, you know, and just, wow, you know, I mean, you know, there really is. I mean, it's like, but it makes so much sense. It's like, you know, if there's such a stigma about being a psychopath, you know, that you just, as soon as you, whatever, I mean, it's just something that it's at a very early age you start hearing about, you know, like psychopath. Oh, he's a psycho. He's a psychopath. She's a psycho. She's a psychopath. I mean, it's just a descriptor that should be neutral. Ultimately, that you know, but what happens is, you know, you just get this fantastic emotional quality gets applied to it, and you know, so people just grow up and feeling marginalized, and yeah, I mean, you know, I'm fortunate. Unfortunately, I'm the, you know, whatever kind I am. You know, I don't, you know, more like when I kill people and chop them up in little pieces or eat them. It's getting more sociopath. I don't know. Maybe I'm somewhere in between, a mixture of both. But either way, I mean, same thing with sociopaths. I mean, if there was just more something in place to normalize it, and, you know, identify it, and then just be supportive of it, you know, I feel like, you know, that there'd be less problems with those kind of people. I mean, maybe that's just idealistic, but, you know, I understand that. I mean, I understand the thought of, and that's, you know, I was glad to see the article, because, you know, that's kind of like what, well, okay, so like when I was a kid, my sister and I, we would just kind of like ruthlessly make fun of people, and just as real young kids. And at some point, you know, it just was like commonplace, just being, you know, making fun of them, you know, just like talking about them without any kind of, you know, empathy or whatever. I mean, it was compartmentalized. It was like, you know, it's not that we didn't care about those people. I mean, maybe I'm like, I don't know. I guess care for a psychopath, it's like, what, you know, what is that exactly? What is that exactly? For me, it's more like, for me, it's, you know, I just, you know, every people are just objects to me. You know, they're just objects, and you know, it depends on how interesting they are. Then I feel like you know, it's either amusing, or if they're, you know, something, I guess it's kind of like possession, you know, maybe, you know, but, you know, I mean, I guess when you try to like boil down what is actual caring, you know, I mean, you could argue that everybody's on the spectrum of that, you know, that they're, even people who are just seem like they're just genuinely doing something. I mean, it's like you can just say and act like you're genuinely doing something, but just have like sinister intentions behind it. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to get sidetracked. I guess I ended up talking about something anyway. I shouldn't go too long. Maybe I should wrap it up and then have a part 2. Okay. So when I was a kid, my sister and I were just kind of ruthlessly made fun of people, not like to their face, you know, just like making observations, and, you know, just, and so I guess some relatives kind of recognized it, and then there's, you know, this one relative, so this one, my Uncle Tom, sounds horrible to say. No, he's not my uncle, he's my cousin. He was older, you know. It's weird with the uncles and cousins that are cousins that are older, because you want to call him uncle. Yeah, he's cousin Tom. He married into the family, but, you know, I guess he had a different perspective because he was, you know, he just kind of came in and started observing. So he would call my sister and I the psycho kids. He recognized that, you know, and so that made an impression, like, well, and I was an adolescent at that time, at that point. But, you know, it was interesting that he recognized that. And, you know, that was meaningful to me that he recognized that, which would help me identify myself, or, you know, relate to, or, you know, figure things. Anyway, that was early childhood, just kind of like blind, you know, doing that, making fun, or, you know, observationally ridiculing and making fun of stuff, you know. I mean, maybe all kids do that, I guess, whatever, you know. It's just, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think there's anything weird about it. But then I think whenever I was in my teens, after my parents had gotten divorced, you know, that kind of like severed some kind of you know, like a tether to some kind of family cloud that would keep a kid in a bubble of not thinking beyond that. So I just started noticing things about people, and just kind of like analyzing it more, and just feeling like I was different in a way, you know. I mean, different, you know, within the billions of people. I'm, you know, one of millions, but still, you know, whatever, in my community or something. You know, just like picking apart my dad, and I just started picking apart my parents in a way of just realizing that you know, there's nothing special about them, really. Well, you know, other than you know, I don't know if you can, I don't want to get too far into that, but, and then I spent most of my 20s just, doing a lot of self-analyzation and just kind of like, you know, torturing myself, with challenging my ego to not, you know, just like not, just noticing the desire to want to take credit for things and just suppressing it, and just like you're just really trying to suppress it, and almost just like a torture pleasure thing, and just trying to, like, you know, not have anything I was doing be known, because I, you know, I mean, and some people maybe they're more naturally that way of just wanting to do that, but you know, so it's just like I'm kind of like disconnecting from my ego, and as I'm doing that, you know, I get into my 30s, and I have a drink of alcohol for the first time, like when I was like 30, 29, I think, or it's the first time I had a drink, an apple martini. An apple martini. This girl was like, I was in a group of people, and she said, how'd you like the drink? And she knew I didn't drink. You know, I mean, that was the big thing. I mean, all my friends group, a different friends group I have was that Nathan doesn't drink. He doesn't do drugs. He doesn't drink. But she just had this wild. She was like, why don't you get a drink, Nathan? And, you know, just something clicked, and I thought, yeah, it's time. It's time. I mean, it just felt like up to that point, it was necessary for me to not drink. And then I got to this point, and it just seemed like, you know, that was the crossroads, or I was at the right place at the right time. So I was like, okay. And she's like, what do you want to drink? And I was like, I don't know what to drink. I don't know what to drink. And I was like, what's good? And she said, well, I like apple martinis. I was like, okay, I'll have an apple martini. And so I had that, and then I started, you know, getting drunk off of it. And man, that was a transcendental experience. You know, I mean, a lot of people talk about going to peyote in the desert or ayahuasca, but for me, it was an apple martini. And you know, I felt like, you know, I just completely noticed, you know, two things, and I started. It was weird because it was very confusing, because so I would continue to drink, you know, in the days after that, and I would just keep coming back to this theme of, you know, whoever was around, I would be rambling about the man on the mountain, the man on the mountain, man on the mountain, man on the mountain. You know, like the man on the mountain is observing, and, you know, it was kind of cloudy, but then it started to become more clearly, you know, that he was observing me as the object, the animal, doing things down below. Which spins off into a whole other thing about consciousness, and you know, where we exist outside the universe, but which I won't get into, but at this point, but anyway, that's just kind of like where, you know, I just, you know, I eventually started seeing myself as my consciousness being the man on the mountain, who's got basically a leash going down to earth, where my body is, filled with ego, and just letting it in, and it just, you know, learning to, like, allow it to do certain things, you know, just like, so, you know, I started kind of having a different perspective. You know, that's another thing, is ego. I mean, ego gets such a bad rap. I mean, ego's only bad if you're, you know, depending on how aware you are of it. I mean, if you're not aware of your ego, then, you know, you could just you're just an out of control monster. I mean, but, you know, if you are aware of your ego, then you can just use it. And especially if you just see everybody else as objects and not as, you know, like where if they, like, depending on whether their consciousness is real or not, that, you know, this is where the psychopath stuff comes in, with the people who like to kill people and chop them up. Is you know, I think that they're like, my guess is that they are seeing this disconnection. They're seeing this thing of consciousness and a tether down to the body on Earth, and, you know, noticing, and they're realizing that people are just objects, that you know, in this state, and that their consciousness are somewhere else, and they just start thinking like, well, I can do whatever I want to them. I can do whatever. I can be a serial killer. I can be a serial rapist, or, you know, whatever. And, you know, I feel really bad for those people, those psychopaths, you know, that they're just, I feel bad for them, that you know, for whatever reason, that their angle is so great in one direction, that it's, that, you know, they have a hard time overcoming it, or they don't have like as much of awareness about it, you know. So in my 30s, you know, I spent most of my 30s worrying about, like, wait, am I a psychopath? You know, like it kind of came together. You know, I was thinking about what my Uncle Tom or Cousin Tom was, you know, had said, and everything was kind of felt like it was coming together, and I was just, and that's when I started, you know, people would start calling me a psychopath, you know, because I was just exercising this like ego on a leash thing, which, you know, I for me, it was like, I feel like how my psychopath thing is basically harmless. You know, really, it's more psychological. You know, it's like, I just want to, what I want to do is I want to get people so upset. You know, what's satisfying to me is getting people so upset, but in a way that it's like where they get themselves upset. You know, like where they, like, kind of creating an atmosphere, or creating some dialogue that ultimately, you know, is more self-deprecating for myself. I'm not saying self, you know, it sounded redundant. I'm not saying like them self-deprecating. I'm saying where I'm doing something self-deprecating, but it comes across, as like threatening to the other person. And so then they retaliate, you know, verbally, and then they just kind of like spin off into a direction that just kind of like, where they just find themselves in a cloud, where they end up acting worse and behaving worse than they think that I am, you know. And that's like really satisfying for me. That's like, you know, that's my, you know, chopping people up and keeping them under a house, or eating them, or, you know, whatever, serial killer stuff. You know, I'm happy doing, and so, you know, that my ego on a leash is just controlling that, you know, and you know, what's important for me is being a gentleman, you know. I mean, just being a gentleman about it, you know, like not hitting below the belt, you know, not making fun of, like, I mean, like making fun of people's weight or skin color, or, you know, things that they can't change about themselves necessarily, you know. I mean, to some degree, you know. I mean, I might push the envelope or whatever with that, but you know, basically having them end up being really upset, and then just like foaming at the mouth. You know, this is at its ultimate. This is at its, like, you know, getting to its what is best, you know, from my perspective, is where there's just like rabid upset, but you could when you trace it back, it's like they did it to themselves, but I just kind of like fostered and nurtured it to happen. So I spent, you know, I was doing that in my 30s, and, you know, I started getting called a psychopath. You know, I was doing it more kind of like a little more out of control. perhaps. And so, that was the first time that I kind of like really was regularly being referred to as a psychopath. And it was, and I guess, just because in my development, it kind of messed with me a little bit, and I worried about it. So that was most of my 30s. And then toward the end of my 30s and into my 40s, in my 40s, I spent just realizing like, you know what? Yes, I am a psychopath. I don't care. But I was, kind of keeping it more liberating feeling of just realizing like that it's just a thing that, I guess needs to be managed, but to some degree, but, and just kind of like thinking about the terms of that and kind of coming up with, ideas about it being, I've always been interested in words like, like the word terrific. I think I used it earlier. That's just a neutral word. It's just a neutral word that people have ended up putting more of a positive spin on. So you just like, that's terrific. You've literally just said something. You're just like, you're describing something that's just like, that could be bad or good, amazing, another one, there's lots of words like that. So, I mean, that concept has always been interesting to me, and I think that, psychopath and sociopath are just terms for things, that, for people. And that, so now that I'm in my 50s, I had this big idea of like, that I want to be helpful. Or just, instead of when in my 40s when I was just like kind of thinking all this, more privately and just kind of like collecting my thoughts. In my 50s, what I decided I wanted to do is to just be more outward with it and just normalizing and talking about it like it's not, whatever, kind of bringing awareness. I don't know. I mean, and who knows if I'll end up doing that, I'm just saying that that's what went through my head as far as like what I want to do, or what I felt like, was the natural thing for me to do in my 50s. So we'll see. I guess we'll see if that, how that pans out. But I would like to, I mean, if we could identify, well, target and identify, I don't know, just find a way to, if there's a way to just normalize being a sociopath and a psychopath and, obviously take note in childhood and instead of doing some kind of a societal lobotomy or just kind of putting these people in a corner and making them feel worse about themselves, because I mean, I'm sure, because they're beating themselves up and that helps drive everything. But I'm lucky. I feel like I'm lucky that my thing is not, I don't think it's that bad, because it doesn't actually physically harm anybody, and it doesn't, and it kind of like more just kind of like teases people to hurt, set themselves up to hurt themselves emotionally. That sounds terrible. Anyway, how did I get onto this? Oh my God. Shit, this is a long video, but hopefully the subject matter is interesting enough. I need my fucking cold burger here. I mean, I probably have more to say about this. I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but here I am. Boy, I bet this golden crunch is gone. Let's see. Golden crunch is there. Golden flavor, golden crunch. Love it. And I'll tell you what else. I love being a psychopath. I love it. God. Not sorry at all. Not sorry at all. People are objects, and and I enjoy them. I love people, but, you know, ultimately I can't help but treat them as objects. And, you know, I think I'm incapable of seeing them as more than that, you know, as they are here on Earth. You know, because if you know that, if you just come from the belief that their consciousnesses are somewhere else, then, you know, who cares? You know? Anyway, I guess I should wrap it up. Yeah, maybe, you know, let me know. Do you want to hear more psychopath talk? Maybe I can think of something else to say about it later. All right, this is too long. Hope you enjoy. Bye.